Hello everyone and welcome to our Sunday School lesson for July 6, 2025. Our lesson today is in Psalms 110 and is entitled God's Messiah. This psalm is a royal psalm. If you remember at the beginning of our study of this quarter, it was brought out by our author this quarter that there are seven different categories of psalm. I've taught two of the lessons, not necessarily taped them, but taught in Sunday school class, and both lessons I've taught have been psalms from the wisdom category. So this is a little bit of a change for me. If you want to look at the other categories and what they represent, they are listed on page 2 in our Sunday school book. So give you a little bit more insight into that. A royal psalm is one that is normally concerned with the earthly king of Israel. In some cases, though, these royal psalms have messianic implications or fulfillments. Psalm 110 happens to be one of these that has a messianic message in a reference to Jesus as the Messiah. Psalm 110 is a short one, but not nearly the shortest in verses or in words. Its brief message tells us much of the reign of Jesus when he returns to earth, and one of the most quoted Old Testament passages in the New Testament. So we'll talk about that shortly. Psalm 110 is a psalm of David and is directly quoted, as we said, 9 times in the New Testament, and it's also attributed to 18 other indirect references in the New Testament for a total of 27 mentions. So just by the number of times that it's referenced in the New Testament, you can tell by that the words here are very important and something God has to say to us. It's a psalm about Jesus as a Messiah, a priest, and a conquering king. In fact, in this chapter, David is prophesying about a conquering king. We all know David as a great warrior, a great king, and that's mentioned often. We talk about that often when we study the books of the Old Testament, that David is the king of Israel. And before he became king, when he slew Goliath, that's the beginning of him being a great warrior. But I think sometimes we forget this aspect of his character, the prophesying, and it's not normally emphasized as much as his kingship and him being a warrior. It's really brought out in this message that we have today in our study. We need to realize in these verses that David is telling us in Psalm 110 that there is a Messiah, and also telling us that what he will accomplish. Now we'll begin our lesson today. I'll read verse 1. The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand till I make your enemies your footstool. The first verse really struck me. It's God giving David insight into an interaction between God and Jesus. When I first read this, it was a little confusing to me, in that if you just scan at it real quickly, it appears that God is talking to himself, but looking closer, you'll notice that the first Lord, the Lord, is in all capital letters, and it's that way in most Bibles, or all, as far as I know, and it refers to God the Father. This is translated from the Hebrew word Yahweh, which usually refers to God the Father. It then refers to my Lord, where all the letters are not capital, just the first one. No matter how great David was in this world, he is saying that you, Jesus, are greater than me, and I'm below you. It also shows that Jesus has always been here with God. We don't know when this conversation took place. It could have been before the beginning of time on this earth, as far as we know. And we also have to remember that in this world, that Jesus was a descendant of David, but he was really here before him. The first verse is also one of the most quoted in the New Testament. I'm referencing the Enduring Word Bible commentary here, but it lists the times that the first verse is quoted in the New Testament. Jesus quoted this verse. He quoted it in Matthew 22:33 and 45, and also Mark 12:36 and 37. And when he quotes it, he's showing how David called the Messiah Lord, recognizing that the Messiah was greater than David himself. Peter quoted it on the day of Pentecost, explaining how David prophesied the deity and ascension of Jesus. That's in Acts 2:34 and 35. Paul referred to it in 1 Corinthians 15:25, explaining that the rule and dominion of Jesus the Messiah. And the author of Hebrews quotes it in Hebrews 1:13, referring to the superiority of Jesus the Messiah over an angel. And again in Hebrews 10:13, explaining the rule and dominion of Jesus the Messiah. David also references Jesus sitting at the right hand of God. This symbolizes a position of authority and elevation. The New Testament interprets this as referring to Jesus or Christ, his exaltation after his resurrection and ascension. The first verse then closes with God the Father telling God the Son that he will make his enemies his footstool, or sit in the position of authority and provide victory by making those who have fought against him, and they will be under his servitude and do his will. So those who have been in power will be below the Lord at this point, and they will do as he commands. Jesus will take up his throne on earth and start the millennial rule. Our next verses are in verses 2 and 3. And I'm reading from the New King James Version here, if it's a little bit different from what you're referencing. The Lord shall send the rod of your strength out of Zion, rule in the midst of your enemies. Your people shall be volunteers in the day of your power. In the beauties of holiness from the womb of the morning, you have the dew of your youth. The Lord shall send the rod of your strength out of Zion. The Messiah's authority will not just be limited to Israel. It will extend to the entire world, dominating all the kings and nations of the earth, giving him rule over all enemies. I think this is a lesson for us as a people in the United States right now. We are fortunate in that we have the opportunity to elect our leaders. They represent us, and we as Christians should seek out godly men who will seek God's will first and not man's will. And that's not always an easy choice that we have, but we need to continue to pray that God will send us men in leadership positions that we can put there and everything. We need to remember that. It's important. It's not about ideologies, but things that we need to do with men following God. God will give them the right thing to do. Another point that I came across in this study of Psalms was from the theologian Adam Clark, who is among those who think the rod of your strength represents the gospel, or as he says, the gospel, the doctrine of Christ crucified, which is the powerful scepter of the Lord that brought us, is quick and powerful, sharper than any two-edged sword, and is the power of God to salvation to all them that believe. Verse 3 then continues, your people shall be volunteers in the day of your power. When the people of God see and experience the victory of the Messiah, they will gladly give themselves to his works. They're willing on the day of they are willing on the day of his power. Uh, since the Hebrew word translated power is the word for a host or army, the idea is that the Messiah's people are gathered together as a willing army. This will not be an army pressed into service by Jesus, but will be those after seeing the glory of God who will rush to serve him in any way they can and seek his will for his service. Yeah, I think about armies. When you have an army that's willing to go, even in this world and everything, it's an army that's fighting for a cause and everything. Not one that's pressed into service, one that's enslaved and made to go to war. It's something we should be thankful for in this country, because all of our servicemen are volunteers and everything. Not that those that have been drafted in the past weren't good soldiers or anything like that, but a willing army is an army that will fight for a cause. We as Christians today need to see this an example of what we should be doing today. We need to be willing volunteers, not as an army, but as some people serving God in areas where he is leading us. This includes in our church, in our community, by helping others where possible, and loving others and doing good works for God. This often opens up a pathway to share the gospel and planting the seed that may someday lead to somebody accepting Christ. And we need to always be mindful of that, of sharing the gospel with others. Verse 3 then continues, you had the dew of your youth. I'm having a hard time saying that today. The people of God will be praising the victorious Messiah, and they are noted for their beautiful holiness, their radiant being, or the womb of the morning, and their ageless strength, the dew of your youth. In other words, the Messiah will be blessing them for their devotion to him, something we can also receive today by showing our devotion to him. Maybe not have those ageless qualities that are talked about here in this earth, but we will have them when we meet him in heaven. Our next verse is verse 4. The Lord has sworn and will not relent. You are a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek. The Lord has sworn and will not relent. This puts the statement which follows it in the most strong context possible. Yahweh, or God the Father, made an oath that will never be broken. God does not break his promises. When he makes an oath, a promise, he's going to keep it. The verse then continues, you are a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek. This is the oath of Yahweh, again, specifically God the Father, regarding priesthood, and that it was after the pattern of Melchizedek, who is mentioned in a single account in the Old Testament, and that's in Genesis 14, 18 through 20. The account is brief, but it's packed with information about Melchizedek. After Abraham defeated the kings who took his nephew Lot captive, Abraham met with a mysterious priest named Melchizedek, whose name means King of Righteousness, and who was also king over the city of Salem, which is an ancient name for the city of Jerusalem, which made him the King of Peace, because that's what Jerusalem means. I don't know the exact meaning, but it's a city of peace, roughly. But Melchizedek was not merely a worshiper of the true God. He had the honored title, priest of the Most High God. The greatness of God magnified the greatness of Melchizedek's priesthood. Melchizedek blessed Abraham, which shows his greatness over the patriarch. Abraham gave Melchizedek a tithe of all the spoils of the battle with the kings he had just defeated. there is no other information about Melchizedek in the Bible except in reference to this passage in Genesis. But it's so important that the author of Hebrews referred to it 5 times and emphasizes several points. In Hebrews 5 and 6 and 5:10, he emphasizes that this was Yahweh's declaration, not something that the Messiah claimed for himself. And in Hebrews 6:20, the emphasis is on the idea that Jesus the Messiah serves now and forever as a living, active high priest for his people. And then Hebrews 7:17, the emphasis here is that the priesthood of Jesus the Messiah, according to the order of Melchizedek, is better than the priestly order of Aaron because it's eternal and it will never end. And then finally in Hebrews 7:21, the emphasis here is that the priesthood of Jesus the Messiah, according to the order of Melchizedek, is better than the priestly order of Aaron because it was founded on a direct oath of Yahweh, unlike the priestly order of Aaron. And then our final verses are in 5 through 7 and concern the king's judgment and final victory. We'll read verses 5 through 7 here. The Lord is at your right hand. He shall execute kings in the day of his wrath. He shall judge among the nations. He will fill the places with dead bodies. He shall execute the heads of many countries. He shall drink of the brook by the wayside. Therefore he shall lift up the head. This is the second part of Psalm 110 and brings the king onto the battlefield where he will contend with the kings of all nations, or those that are against him. This will not be with an army, as it mentions in verse 3, but will be with Yahweh and his chosen king, the Messiah, acting as one to defeat the enemies of the world. These verses describe the Messiah as judge, executing justice and vengeance upon his enemies. The passage depicts judgment against the wicked and concludes with the Messiah's ultimate triumph. He shall execute kings with the authority mentioned in Psalms 110:2. The strength of the Messiah extends out of Zion, as we mentioned earlier, and brings the righteous judgment of God against even the greatest kings, no matter how great they'll be at that time or thought of. His judgment will be brought against them. As we've stated before, God's judgment will extend to the entire world. He shall fill the places with dead bodies. And this appears to be a reference to the slaughter at the Battle of Armageddon, as mentioned in Revelation 16:16 and 19:11 through 21. And finally, after the final battle, the Messiah will drink and lift up his head in victory, and along with this, his people will be raised up also. In conclusion, there are several key themes in Psalm 110. They are the Messiah as the king, a priest, and a judge. I would like to encourage everybody listening today to further study this psalm. Our Sunday school book has all the passages that I've mentioned today that pertain to this chapter and others. Look those up and get a sense of how important this psalm is to our understanding of God's Word. If you don't have a Sunday school book, give us a call here at Temple Baptist. The number is 573-785-1250. And if you're looking for a church home, we would love to have you visit with us. We've always got an open space for anybody that would like to visit, and we'd like to share God's Word for you. And as always, I want to thank everyone for the opportunity to share God's Word with you. I hope it's a blessing to you, and I know it is to me, and have a good week. Thank you.